What do you think about whiteboarding interviews? Did you have one when you were doing your internship for Microsoft? And what's your overall thought? I actually just one more point to add before you answer that, Tim, was that Clement just had a really good video where he mentions that he really believes in algorithms. Obviously, he has a service on it, but he was thinking that that is a good way to prepare people for jobs in the programming space. And the reason he said that is, one, it's a great way to check what level of competency someone's at, their communication skills, their problem solving skills. It's also a great way of filtering out false positives, where someone could basically trick their way into an interview because it's really hard to fake an algorithm interview and go through it, while maybe other type of interview types it's easier to do that, and it's really scalable too.
For sure, yeah. So I'll tell you my experience with whiteboarding interviews first, and then I'll kind of answer those questions. So I got a phone interview for Microsoft, and I obviously have accepted that job in probably like early November. And that interview took place like 2 weeks after I secured the interview. So I had never once done like one of these programming type questions. Like, okay, maybe a few random ones, but I didn't know what leak code was. Like, I didn't do any of these kind of questions. So as soon as I got that phone interview, I started doing a little research and was like, okay, what the heck is this? So I figured out, oh, damn, I'm going to have to like actually kind of prepare for this to make sure I at least understand what's being asked of me, so I know how to answer this question properly. So anyways, I did a little bit of prep. The phone interview was pretty easy. I passed the phone interview. Also remember that I program all the time. So regardless of the fact that I don't do these kind of questions, I'm still pretty good at answering them, even if I'm not preparing for them. And then once I got that, they're like, okay, we're going to bring you out on site to Redmond to do your interview. So I didn't really know what this was going to look like. Again, like I hadn't even been looking at this big space. Like I didn't realize this was a huge kind of niche on programming interviews and making videos and courses and things on programming interviews. So I just started preparing, and I had the interview about a month and a half later. It was probably 2 months later in January, because the Christmas break was coming up. So I did a bunch of prep, I did leak code, I used Algo Expert, which is a great service, I definitely recommend that. And I did that mock interview with Clement, which you would have seen on, that was like the Google mock interview. It was like a calendar matching question, something like that. So I did do 3 in-person whiteboarding interviews at Microsoft. All 3 of them were different, and all 3 of them were not what I was really expecting. So I was kind of told that Microsoft was going to ask these kind of questions. This is what it was going to look like. This was the format. But because I was applying for a very specific position, I was applying for one position. I wasn't applying just as a general intern. Like I knew the team I was going to be on already when I went there, which is in the cloud and AI division. It's the core Python extension team. I had 3 people on that team actually interview me. So the first interview I did, just to give a little context here, was like a pretty basic run length encoding question. It was kind of vague. It was like, if you want to encode these characters using numbers and letters, how would you do that? So it wasn't even just like a programming question. It was also somewhat of a design question, because they wanted me to go through the algorithm I was actually going to pick to write. So that was interesting, something I didn't think was going to come. And then I had another question, which was pretty much make Minesweeper, like a very basic implementation of Minesweeper. And that was like really all he said. He was like, this is how Minesweeper works. He's like, these are the functionality I want you to have, like class it out, like do whatever you need to do. And then the last question was a really difficult custom question that the guy himself asked. This was the boss of the team, like kind of the big boss is what I like to call him. And it was I would rank it a hard leak code question, although it wasn't anything like you would see on leak code. So I passed all those questions. From their feedback, I thought I did really well. And now to get into my kind of opinion on it, just so I give you at least some background so you understand where I'm coming from, I think they're a very good way to test a candidate's ability. I don't know that much about front end. I think you guys do a lot more web dev stuff than me, so maybe you can talk about that after. But at least for critical thinking skills and back end development and just programming in general, I think that's one of the best tests you can kind of give someone, because you can really dive into their thought process and see how they think through that interview. And to me, that's the biggest deal. Like if I was running a tech company today, I would 100% screen all my candidates, if they were going to be programmers, with a whiteboarding question, because I just want to see how they think. I don't even really care if they can, if they have an algorithm memorized and they can answer it in like 10 minutes and are just like really good at coding. I just want to see how they think. I want to see how they work with other people, and I want to see how they explain themselves. Because to me, communication is a huge deal. And I think that if anything, the whiteboarding interview, which a lot of people I think fail to realize, is more of a test on your communication skills and your thought process than it is on your actual ability. Obviously, you have to program, but for me, the easiest part is actually programming and writing the algorithm. The hardest part is trying to talk about it while I'm doing it and make sure they understand what I'm saying and I can explain my solution clearly. And that's why I definitely do believe in them. I think that we're losing a few candidates when we do something like that because maybe there's some people that are really good designers, right? But they crack under the pressure. Like they can't deal with doing that in front of someone in 45 minutes, which I get. That's the only really negative I see, like in my opinion, is that we're probably going to lose some people due to just like the nervousness of them coming onto site and having like 3 people sitting behind them while they have 45 minutes to code out and talk about a solution on a whiteboard. But if they can handle doing that, then I think it's a great screening process. So that's kind of my thought process on the whiteboard coding interview. I enjoy doing them personally as well. I think they're fun, but I get why some people get nervous doing them.
Yeah, I get the nervous aspect. So when I first started interviewing for roles, and this happened back in college also, when I'd take like midterms and finals, I'd get so nauseous sometimes I'd throw up. It doesn't happen anymore, but I do remember when I first started interviewing and doing whiteboard stuff, I would like throw up in the bush and I'd go and do my interview. I have sort of a slightly different stance on this. I like the idea. I agree completely about the communication. Like you can go write the world's best algorithm, but if you can't explain how it works and why you did it, you're not going to get the job. And so you got to be able to do that because that's part of being a team. It's part of working together. I like to give something so simple that if you can't solve it, then there's an issue. Like you should be able to use the basic language and this and that. But the best type of whiteboarding problems in mine are less maybe data structure and algorithm focused, but more so like I think it was you said one of your interviews was the Minesweeper one. If you had to design something, what would your classes be? How would you do it? Would it be, would you use inheritance? Would you, let them just sort of very high level break it down. And if they can't do that, then that's a little scary to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's why I was a little bit taken aback when I went there, because what I actually do better than I would say programming questions is design. I mean, I've written a lot of programs. I've created a lot of applications and stuff. Nothing like, super to scale, but it is something that's a huge skill, is taking this massive problem and breaking it down into every single subcomponent until you get to the simplest problems possible and solving them. And that's what I would definitely do as well. So those more design type questions, I really I enjoy them more. And I think that you're right. I think they show more because you get, that's what I was kind of trying to get at, is you can really dig into the way someone thinks about a problem and the way that they approach us, getting a solution, and the way they break down complex information. And to me, that's where there's a lot of value in these programming interviews. Even if I would give someone a very difficult design question and just ask them, just do it, just go and just see what they come up with and try to hint them and guide them along the way. And I don't even care if they get a final answer. I just wanted to see their process of trying to solve it. And at Shopify, I actually did a interview. So this was local. That was in Ottawa. And that's pretty much what they asked me. I didn't write one line of code. All they asked me was design this. That literally was the sentence that they started off with. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but they gave me a little bit of specification. Essentially, it was a system for hooking up photographers, and I guess it's people that are selling stuff on the site so that they can send them products and they can take photos of it. And to me, that's a much more valuable question. I passed that interview as well, where they're just asking you, design this, draw out the classes, how would you break down this information? Because I think if you know someone is good enough at programming, the implementation should be the easiest part. The hard part that I really want to look for is how do they think, right? What are they thinking about when they're doing this, which I think you were getting at.